So today I want to talk about something that I think is the most important question of this entire war. Not who is winning, not how many strikes have been launched, not what Trump said yesterday or what Iran threatened today. The most important question is this: can America actually stop this war? Can it negotiate a ceasefire? Can it withdraw? Can it find a way out? And the answer, when you look at it carefully, is deeply unsettling. America is trapped. It is stuck. It cannot go forward and it cannot go back. And today I want to explain exactly why, step by step, in simple, easy to understand English. So let us begin. Part 1. This war has its own momentum. The first thing you need to understand about this war is that once a war like this starts, it develops its own momentum, its own logic. It stops being something that politicians and generals control, and it starts controlling them. Think about Ukraine. That war started in February 2022. And from the very first weeks, both sides knew that a negotiated settlement was possible. Both sides knew that continuing the war was causing enormous damage, enormous suffering, enormous economic cost. And yet, 4 years later, that war is still going, still grinding, still destroying lives and economies on both sides. Why? Because once a war starts, stopping it requires one side to accept something deeply painful, to accept loss, to accept humiliation, to accept terms that feel unbearable. And that is something most governments, most leaders find almost impossible to do. This war in Iran is going to follow exactly the same pattern. Neither side will concede defeat, even when it is clearly in their best interest to stop. And this war could drag on for years and years. That is not a prediction. That is a pattern, a historical pattern that repeats itself over and over again. But here's what makes this war even more complicated than Ukraine. Even if America wanted to stop, even if America decided today that it wanted a ceasefire, it cannot. Not because Iran will not negotiate, but because the terms Iran would demand would be so devastating for America that accepting them would be worse than continuing the war. Let me explain this trap very carefully. Part 2, the ceasefire trap. So let us imagine America decides it wants to negotiate a ceasefire with Iran. It picks up the phone, it reaches out through back channels, maybe through Oman or Qatar, and it says, "Let us talk." What does Iran say back? Iran says, "Fine, we will stop fighting, but here are our terms." First, America pays Iran approximately $1 trillion in reparations. $1 trillion for the destruction caused by this war, for the decades of sanctions, for the economic damage inflicted on the Iranian people. Second, and this is the critical one, America must leave the Middle East permanently, pack up its bases, withdraw its forces, remove its military presence from the entire region forever, because Iran's position is very simple. The only way to guarantee Iran's long-term survival is to ensure that America can never come back and do this again. Now, on the surface, some people might say, well, maybe that is not so bad. Maybe America should leave the Middle East anyway. But here is why that thinking completely misunderstands the situation. The moment America leaves the Middle East, a chain reaction begins. A chain reaction that will be catastrophic for the American economy and for American power globally. Let me walk you through this chain reaction step by step. Step 1. The GCC becomes Iran's client states. Right now, the GCC nations, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, they exist under American military protection. America guarantees their safety. America is the reason they can function as independent nations. The moment America withdraws, that protection disappears. And the only nation in the region with the military power to guarantee the safety of the GCC and to control access to the Strait of Hormuz is Iran. So the GCC nations have no choice. They become client states of Iran. They fall under Iranian influence. They have to make their peace with Tehran, because without American protection, Iran is the only game in town. Step 2, the petrodollar collapses. Now here is where it gets really serious for America, because the GCC is not just a collection of oil-rich desert nations. The GCC is the foundation of something called the petrodollar. And the petrodollar is the single most important mechanism keeping the American economy alive. Let me explain this simply. The GCC sells its oil in US dollars. Every barrel of oil that Saudi Arabia sells, every cubic foot of gas that Qatar exports, It is all priced and sold in US dollars. That means every nation on earth that needs Gulf energy, which is most nations, has to hold US dollars to buy it. That creates a permanent global demand for US dollars. And then the GCC takes those dollars it earns from selling oil and recycles them back into the American economy. It buys American treasury bonds. It invests in American financial markets. It funds American debt. This is the mechanism, this petrodollar recycling that allows America to function with $39 trillion in debt. $39 trillion. The American economy is essentially a Ponzi scheme. It relies on foreign nations continuously buying US dollars and US debt to keep functioning. And the petrodollar is the engine that drives that entire system. Now, the moment the GCC falls under Iranian influence, what happens to the petrodollar? It disappears. The GCC no longer has any reason to sell its oil in US dollars. It no longer has any reason to recycle its earnings back into American markets. The entire foundation of American financial power collapses. And remember, America is sitting on $39 trillion in debt. Without the petrodollar, without foreign nations continuously buying US dollars, the American economy cannot service that debt. It cannot function. The consequences would be catastrophic. Step 3. Japan and South Korea remilitarize. So now let us look at what happens in Asia when America withdraws from the Middle East. Japan and South Korea are watching everything that is happening right now very carefully. They are watching America's struggle in Iran. They're watching the limitations of American military power being exposed in real time. And they're asking themselves a very uncomfortable question. If America cannot win decisively against Iran, can America really protect us against China? Against North Korea? Can we really trust our entire national security to a nation that is clearly overstretched and struggling? And if America then withdraws from the Middle East, that question becomes impossible to ignore. Because if America is willing to leave the Middle East when things get difficult, it might be willing to leave Asia too. So Japan and South Korea have no choice. They have to remilitarize. They have to build up their own military capabilities. They have to stop relying on American protection and start protecting themselves. Japan, which has been pacifist since World War II, is already talking about the most significant military expansion in its post-war history. That process accelerates dramatically if America withdraws from the Middle East. And here is the consequence for America. Japan and South Korea remilitarizing means they are spending their resources on their own defense instead of buying American weapons and supporting American military infrastructure. Another blow to American economic and strategic power. Step 4, Europe makes peace with Russia. And now let us look at Europe. Right now, Europe is supporting America's confrontation with Russia in Ukraine. It is paying enormous economic costs, energy costs, military costs, refugee costs to maintain that position. But Europe is watching the Middle East very carefully too. And if America withdraws from the Middle East, Europe draws one very logical conclusion. If America is withdrawing from the Middle East, America is retreating. America is pulling back. America is no longer the reliable guarantor of global security it once was. So why are we, Europe, continuing to fight America's war in Ukraine at enormous cost to ourselves? Would it not be in our best interest to negotiate a peace treaty with Russia as soon as possible, before things get even worse? And the moment Europe makes peace with Russia, the entire Western alliance system that America has built over 80 years begins to fracture. NATO loses its coherence. American strategic dominance in Europe evaporates. Another devastating blow to American global power. Step 5, the US dollar loses reserve currency status. So now let us add all this together. The petrodollar collapses. Japan and South Korea stop supporting American military infrastructure. Europe fractures from the Western alliance. What does all of this mean for the US dollar? It means the US dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency. Nations stop holding dollars. Nations stop buying American debt. Nations stop recycling their earnings into American markets. And America, sitting on $39 trillion in debt, has absolutely no way to service that debt without the global demand for dollars that reserve currency status provides. The American economy, which is essentially a Ponzi scheme dependent on foreign nations continuously buying US dollars, collapses. This is why America cannot withdraw from the Middle East. This is the trap. The cost of staying in this war is enormous. But the cost of leaving is even more enormous. America is stuck. It has no good options, only bad ones and worse ones. Part 3, the ground invasion trap. So if America cannot negotiate a ceasefire and cannot withdraw, what does it do? The pressure builds to escalate, to do something dramatic, to show strength. And that is where the ground invasion trap begins. Right now, there is talk of approximately 200 Marines coming in from Okinawa heading to the Middle East. And the rumor, and I want to be clear this is a rumor, is that the intention is for these Marines to take Kharg Island. Now let me explain why Kharg Island matters. Kharg Island is where Iran exports approximately 90% of its oil. 90%. It is Iran's economic lifeline, its most critical strategic asset. And the logic of taking it seems very compelling on the surface. If America takes Kharg Island, it destroys Iran's ability to fund this war. It cuts off Iran's oil revenue. It brings Iran to its knees economically. And it would look fantastic on television. Trump would look strong. American morale would surge. But here is the problem. You can take Kharg Island, but you cannot hold it. Kharg Island sits very close to the Iranian coast. The moment American Marines land on that island, Iran starts hitting it with artillery, with drones, with missiles. The island becomes a killing ground. So to protect the Marines on Kharg Island, America has to take control of the nearby coastline. But now American forces are on the Iranian coast, and the Iranian coast is overlooked by the Zagros Mountains. So Iran starts hitting American positions from the mountains, so now America has to take the mountains too. And once you are in the Zagros Mountains, you are inside Iran. You are occupying Iranian territory. You are no longer conducting a limited military operation. You are in a land war inside one of the most geographically challenging countries on earth. This is mission creep. And history tells us exactly where mission creep leads. In 1965, America sent 3,000 Marines into Da Nang in Vietnam. Just 3,000 Marines. A limited mission, a defined objective. 4 years later, America had 500,000 troops in Vietnam. 500,000. From 3,000 to 5,000. Because once you commit, once you are inside, you cannot leave. Because leaving means admitting defeat. And the sunk cost, the lives already lost, the money already spent, makes leaving psychologically and politically impossible. That is the sunk cost fallacy. And it is one of the most powerful and dangerous forces in all of human decision making. Once you have invested enough, once you have lost enough, you keep going. Not because going forward makes sense, but because stopping feels like all those losses were for nothing. America went through this in Vietnam. It went through it in Iraq. It went through it in Afghanistan. And it is about to go through it again in Iran. Part 4, why America is actually losing this war. And now I want to tell you something that most mainstream coverage is completely hiding from you. The American military does not want to fight this war. Not because American soldiers are not brave or capable, they are. But because the American military has war-gamed this conflict, tested it in simulations, run the scenarios, modeled the outcomes countless times. And every single time they run the war game, America loses. Let me say that again. Every single time American military planners simulate a full-scale war against Iran, they lose. Why? Because the American military is built for a very specific kind of warfare. It is built for shock and awe, for overwhelming air power, for precision strikes that destroy an enemy's defenses in days. That is what happened in Iraq in 2003. America achieved air supremacy in days. Rolled into Baghdad in weeks, toppled the regime in under a month. Easy, clean, fast. But Iran is completely different. Iran has been studying America's military playbook for over 20 years. It has watched every American war, analyzed every American tactic, identified every American weakness, and built its entire military strategy specifically to counter what America does. Iran does not try to fight America the way America wants to fight. It does not mass its forces for America to destroy with air power. It disperses. It hides. It uses asymmetric tactics, drones, hypersonic missiles, underground facilities, proxy forces across the region. All of it specifically designed to negate America's advantages and exploit America's vulnerabilities. And nowhere is this more visible than with America's aircraft carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald Ford. These are the most powerful naval vessels ever built. Each one carries enough firepower to devastate a small country. They are the ultimate symbol of American military power, and they are sitting far away from Iran's coast, threatening, posturing, but not actually doing very much, because getting too close to Iran means entering the range of Iranian drones and hypersonic missiles. And a carrier, for all its power, is also an enormous target. Losing a carrier would be one of the most catastrophic military and psychological blows America has ever suffered. So the carriers stay back, and Iran knows they will stay back. The Iranians have spent 20 plus years preparing for exactly this war. They know the American playbook better than most American generals, and they have the perfect counter to it. Part 5. What should America actually do? So given all of this, given that America cannot stop, cannot withdraw, cannot win cleanly, and is sliding toward a ground invasion trap, what should America actually do? The honest answer requires stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. This war in Iran does not exist in isolation. It is connected to everything else happening in the world right now. The trade war with China, the war in Ukraine, the tensions in Asia, all of it. These are not separate conflicts. They are all symptoms of the same underlying problem. American empire is overstretched. It has its fingers in everything. Every conflict, every region, every dispute, and by having its fingers in everything, it allows its enemies to provoke it, to drag it into conflicts that drain its resources, damage its reputation, and weaken its position globally. That is exactly what is happening right now. The only real solution, the only path that preserves both American power and global stability is a fundamental change in approach. Instead of trying to dominate everything, America needs to sit down with everyone. Russia, China, Iran, all of them, and acknowledge that the old world order where America was the unchallenged hegemon is over, and that a new order is needed. One where America is not the bully, but a genuine partner, where every major power has a stake in stability, where the global economy can function in a way that benefits everyone, not just a privileged few. What does that actually look like in practice? It means America stops trying to maintain military bases in 80 countries. It means America stops using the dollar as a weapon of economic warfare against nations it disagrees with. It means America sits at the same table as Russia and China and Iran and says, we all have interests here. We all have things we need. We all have people who depend on us. Let us build a system where everyone gets enough of what they need, that nobody feels the need to go to war to get it. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. And right now, wisdom is the only thing that can save us from the catastrophe that is coming if this war continues on its current path. Whether America has the humility and the vision to take that path, that is the most important question of our time. And honestly, I do not know the answer. But I do know this. The longer America waits to make that choice, the more expensive and the more painful that choice becomes for America, for Iran, for the entire world. So let us just recap what we have covered today. This war has its own momentum, just like Ukraine, and neither side can easily stop it. America cannot negotiate a ceasefire because Iran's demands would trigger a catastrophic 5-step chain reaction. GCC becomes Iran's client states. Petrodollar collapses. Japan and South Korea remilitarize. Europe makes peace with Russia. US dollar loses reserve currency status. American economy built on $39 trillion of debt collapses. America cannot send ground troops because Karg Island leads to the coast, leads to the Zagros Mountains, leads to a full-scale land war, mission creep exactly like Vietnam, from 3,000 Marines to 500,000 troops. America cannot win militarily because the American military loses every single war game simulation against Iran. And Iran has spent 20 years building the perfect counter to America's playbook. America is trapped. It cannot go forward. It cannot go back. It cannot stay where it is indefinitely. And the only real exit, the only path that does not lead to catastrophe is wisdom. A new partnership, a new world order where America leads not through domination, but through cooperation. Whether that happens, only time will tell. Subscribe for more analysis of this conflict explained in simple English. And tell me in the comments, do you think America will find a way out of this trap? Or is this war going to drag on for years, just like Ukraine? I will see you next time.